Rain struck the rusted corrugated roofs of the remote outpost, each drop hitting like a tiny hammer. Mud churned under the boots of soldiers running between makeshift barricades, voices cutting through the wind with clipped urgency. On the far edge of the compound, behind a row of sandbags blackened with soot, a young woman lay flat on her stomach, cheek pressed to the rifle stock, breath shallow. Her right eye peered through the scope, the world beyond it narrowing to a single line of sight. She had exactly 3 seconds before the man on the ridge disappeared. 3 seconds to decide whether to pull the trigger or watch her squad walk into an ambush they wouldn't survive. Her heart thudded against the dirt, loud enough, it seemed, to give her away. Her finger rested on the trigger, calm but sure. At 18 years old, Ilara Vale had been the youngest recruit ever cleared for deployment to this zone. Too young, some had whispered, not behind her back but just quietly enough that no one heard them say it. Her commanding officer had said nothing then. Only watched her shoot during training. Watched the way her breathing slowed, the way her body stilled until she seemed carved out of the same stone as the rifle in her hands. Ilara was a quiet girl from a quiet town, the kind of place where evenings smelled of wet grass and faraway smoke, where kids played ball under buzzing street lamps until the stars came out. She had been the only child of a single mother, who worked nights at a diner with peeling wallpaper and a jukebox that skipped on every other song. Ilara had grown up sitting in the corner booth, sketching in cheap notebooks until closing time, drawing pictures of faraway places she thought she might never see. But then her uncle, a veteran who had carried the war home in his eyes, started telling stories, not of glory, not of medals, but of brothers who never came back, and the silence that followed. Something in those stories had lit a spark Ilara could not put out. She enlisted on her 18th birthday, her mother crying softly into her hands, her tears landing on the papers as Ilara signed them. In basic training, Ilara had been smaller than most, quieter than all of them. But when the rifles came out, the chatter stopped. Her first shot had torn a clean hole through the target's center, from a distance that made instructors exchange looks. By the end of the first month, she was out shooting veterans who had been training recruits for years. The others started calling her Wraith, not because she never missed, but because no one ever heard her coming. Now, lying on the ground thousands of miles from home, the girl with the quiet eyes and steady hands felt the weight of every decision pressing into the earth beneath her. Through her scope, the target was barely visible, a shadow slipping between rocks, setting charges that would ignite the road ahead. One wrong move, one heartbeat too late, and the squad that trusted her would never make it back. She exhaled slowly, letting the world narrow to silence. The wind tugged at her collar. Her fingers squeezed. The shot cracked through the storm like a lightning strike, echoing across the valley. The figure on the ridge dropped where he stood. A second later, another figure appeared, then another. 3, 4, 5 silhouettes scrambling for cover, trying to find where death had come from. Ilara didn't move. Her breathing slowed even more, her rifle tracking each movement with unshakable calm. Another shot, another figure down. She did not stop until the ridge was quiet again. When it was over, the squad emerged from cover, staring at her as though she were something not entirely human. They counted the bodies later. 8 confirmed kills, every shot clean, every shot at a distance that would have made even a veteran hesitate. The ridge was clear, the road safe. They would live to see the next sunrise because of her. But word traveled faster than the wind. By the time Ilara returned to base, the entire unit knew. Her name passed from tent to tent, from fire to fire, until even the officers were talking about it. She had shattered the previous record for confirmed hits at that distance. Not by a single meter, but by hundreds. What she had done was not just skill. It was something beyond that, something that made even the hard men with lined faces and worn boots look at her with a mixture of respect and unease. Some questioned whether it was right to send someone so young into a moment that would live in memory forever, but Ilara never spoke about it. She cleaned her rifle in silence, night after night, her movements precise, almost ritualistic. The conflict did not end that day. The next morning, orders came for another operation, then another. Weeks bled into months, and Hilara kept doing what she did best. Watching, waiting, pulling the trigger only when it mattered, she became the unseen guardian of the squad. The quiet shadow they trusted more than the maps in their hands. But one day the tables turned. An enemy sniper took position high in the hills, pinning the squad behind cover. Bullets ripped into the dirt inches from their heads. Panic threatened to break the men who had once seemed unbreakable. Hilara crawled forward, inch by inch, until she found a patch of ground just barely high enough to see through her scope. The shot she would take was nearly impossible. The wind was fierce, the distance farther than anything she had ever attempted, and the enemy moved like smoke, vanishing into shadow. She waited. Minutes stretched into a lifetime. Her squad held their breath behind her, and then she saw it. The smallest glint of light, the reflection off the enemy's scope. That was all she needed. She adjusted her rifle, heart steady, hands unshaking. This one has to count, she thought. The world fell away. She squeezed the trigger. When the bullet found its mark, the hill went silent. The squad looked at her wide-eyed, as if they were seeing her for the first time all over again. They broke cover, advancing safely at last, shouting her name. Hilara only lowered her rifle and stared at the horizon. Back at base, the commander pulled her aside. There were no speeches, no medals pinned on in front of cameras, just a quiet nod of respect. "You just set a new record," the commander said simply. "That shot will be talked about for years." But Hilara did not smile. She had not done it for records, not for glory. She had done it so the men behind her would go home. Later that night, sitting alone by the fire, Hilara ran a cloth over the barrel of her rifle, the same way she always did. She thought about home, the smell of rain on the road, the sound of her mother humming in the kitchen. She thought about the ones who would never make it back. And she whispered into the night, not a prayer but a promise. Every shot was for you. When the war ended and Hilara returned home, no one recognized her at first. She was still just a girl to them, but her eyes had seen more than most men twice her age. At the town's welcome home ceremony, people cheered and clapped, but when they called her name, the crowd fell quiet, as if they could feel the weight of what she carried. Hilara stepped forward, shook hands, and said only one thing before walking away. It wasn't about breaking records. It was about making sure we all came home. And for a moment, the entire crowd stood still, hats over hearts, silent as the hills she had once protected. Some heroes shout their stories. Others leave them written in the dirt and the wind, carried by those who were there. Hilara Vale's shot would be remembered, not because it was the longest, but because it saved lives. If you are watching this now, you know what that means. The quiet strength it takes to act when it matters most. Tell us where you're watching from, and share this story with someone who needs to remember what courage looks like. Because sometimes history is changed, not by the loudest voices, but by the quietest trigger pull.